And going back to the BYD in particular, I think that's where the question was related to the battery technology. One of the concerns I have is there is quite a difference in lithium-ion technology for consumer electronics versus when you put it in cars. In a consumer electronics cell phone or laptop, you have one cell or maybe half a dozen. When you go to a vehicle pack, it's 50 to 100 or to a larger number, and that puts a demand for cell-to-cell consistency, both in terms of materials and processing, which requires a high level of automation. And some of that, I think, in China in particular, a lot of the production is still pretty labor-intensive. I don't know whether that's a requirement or what the rules are, but that's been the case, and I think it's going to be difficult to achieve the kind of quality that would be needed in the battery technology in that kind of an operation.
Gentleman with the beard, you had a question? Gentleman there with the beard, could you pass him the mic? Okay, you ask a question and then pass it to him. Sorry.
Thank you. It's just because I was wondering. I think this panel is about clean fuels or future fuels more than future cars.
Yes.
So we proved here in this country that we can run cars just with biofuels,
yes,
just with ethanol. And we know that many other countries could do that. We could spread this experience at least in more than 100 countries on sugarcane, for example. So this would be a solution in terms of fuels. When you go to electric, we depend on clean electricity.
Sorry, could you hold the mic to mouth?
And we depend on clean electricity. And we know that we are not going to have enough clean electricity in the world. Wind, solar are not so good in terms of having clean electricity as we have in terms of the biofuels. So how do you answer this question about do we have enough clean electricity for electric cars compared to clean fuels to the current cars that we have?
Okay. Gentleman there with the, no, with the chap with the beard.
Partial to people with beards, Jeff.
Sorry?
You're partial to people
Absolutely,
with beards.
yes. The Beard Solidarity Front.
Yeah, thank you. That's my trademark. Okay, two quick questions. One question for the electric car sector. How do you address the issue of, on sustainability grounds, the issue of mining lithium and other metals that are concentrated in a few parts of the world? And if you believe if electric cars are a solution for developing countries. And my second question goes for Amyris. If Amyris were to export bio-based gasoline or bio-based diesel to
Sorry,
the
what was
US,
that question?
if Amyris
Yes.
were to export
Yes.
From Brazil
Yeah.
bio-based diesel or bio-based gasoline to Europe or the US, do you think it would face the same trade barriers as ethanol faces today?
I'll take one question here and then that gentleman over there. The lady here.
My question is on the intellectual property, and I was wondering if Amyris could share a little bit on the basis by which allows you to come to Brazil to use this biostock without being so concerned with the intellectual property violations, and what can be done so that other technologies could move around the globe faster. Thank
you. Plínio Nastari from Brazil. I would like to listen to your opinion on the option of fuel cells, which is an electric car, running on liquid fuels with onboard reform, having in mind that fuel cells would be a means of achieving the benefits of higher efficiency, thermodynamic efficiency of the electric car, taking advantage of the existing network for distribution of liquid fuels that we have today, and having in mind that sugarcane ethanol is a feasible option for production of biofuels in large scale without using too much land.
I think there was one more question here. Yeah.
Thanks. I just want to, I guess, John, question's really to you, but really all the panelists can talk about this. Let's just play a sort of a game of get rid of all the barriers to the technology. Let's just say that tomorrow all Americans wake up and all Europeans wake up and they have a plug-in electric car in their garage instead of their SUVs. And the SUVs just disappeared somehow. And those cars are powered not by coal-fired power plants, as Marco was alluding to, but they're powered by wind and solar electricity, and we've resolved all the grid problems. So the rich countries all of a sudden wake up tomorrow with the most clean cars on Earth, okay? And we forget the indirect impacts of mining lithium in Bolivia and things like that. What happens to the price of oil, John? And what happens to that existing infrastructure with oil? It would seem to me that the rest of the world would be like Caracas. Oil would be really cheap, and we'd all drive those big SUVs here in São Paulo, in Mumbai, and Beijing. That's the question. I think the fascinating thing, from a common standpoint, is that we love to talk about disruptive technology, but the internet wasn't that disruptive. We started with copper wires, and the iPhone is not that disruptive. It still works on a non-3G network. So it used existing infrastructure to operate with very cool technology.
Right. Got a lot of questions there. Probably too many, but I'll try to get through all of them. First of all, let's address the other energy questions. The question of fuel cells and whether there's enough clean electricity. Is there any future for fuel cells?
I guess I'll take that one first. It may be, but I don't know when. It's a long time. And furthermore, the question comes up is saying exactly what it is that the fuel cells are going to provide, because if you try and do it based on hydrogen, you have the issues of, first of all, generating and distributing hydrogen. If you do it as a liquid fuel, you lose the game before you start. So then it comes to the onboard reformers. But there again, the question of both the complexity and the cost of doing that economically and effectively, and secondly, then putting it through the double or triple conversion process of going through. So there is some sort of an emotional or intellectual appeal for a fuel cell-based solution, but it's something we've been looking at for the last at least 15, 20 years. I'm not sure when or if they would become practical and would make sense.
And is there enough technology out there? Is there enough capital out there to generate the clean electricity? I mean, we have an effective wind-powered solution at the moment. That is reasonably cheap, not as cheap as coal, but the technology is reliable. It's produced at scale. But solar power is not yet there. Nuclear power works, but it's controversial and it's very capital intensive. So where is all the clean green electricity for battery-driven cars going to come from?
Yeah, and I think that maybe part of the question was that the biofuels are here now and ethanol is here now.
Yes, the biofuels are here now.
And so
yes.
that's
Sorry,
really...
that was understood.
Yeah, that's really the issue of, I think it's not an either-or solution, that we do need to make use of the technology that's available today. And actually, I think what Brazil has done is outstanding in terms of the kind of biofuel that they've developed that beats just about anything else. And that's something that needs to be used and will continue to be used, but I'm not sure that's necessarily a sustainable global solution while the technology for putting this additional clean capacity on the grid and the infrastructure. And that is going to happen. It is starting to happen. And there are a lot of complementary things that are falling in place, for example, what's happening with the battery technology and so forth. So I think it's a matter of when and the transition, and that's why on the vehicle side, the plug-in hybrid makes a lot of sense because it does not require you to give up the existing fuel or the existing infrastructure, but gradually allows you to make the transition.
Batteries don't require you to do that, but they will put a if they are widely adopted, they will put a strain on the grid. There will have to be more power generated.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to generate power is to build coal-fired power stations. We all know that. So that is the easiest way to do it. So the gentleman's question is a good one. Is there enough capacity for alternatives to that, or in the alternative, carbon capture and storage, I suppose? Is it realistic that those will come along, or will it just be that batteries may be a good solution to transport, but they're a terrible solution to the environment?
Right. No, it is, and I think that that's partly because you cannot make the assumption that the switch is going to happen overnight. The dreaming part is good, but I don't think that is realistic in terms of overnight us switching all to electric cars. And as I say, going up to even 10%, it doesn't require us to put any more capacity. And the utilities are watching this space very closely, and they will be bringing capacity online. And as they replace existing capacity, it will be with renewables.
I have to agree with that. You know, it doesn't make any sense to start dreaming about what if tomorrow everybody wakes up and drives an electric car, because it isn't going to happen. Alone because of the cost of batteries right now. One thing I think everybody has to be clear about is that the battery is so expensive right now that we probably will see gasoline-powered low-end cars, so the very cheaper end of the cars today, will remain gasoline cars for several years, simply because you cannot make at the moment a car for $10,000 to $15,000. You know, an electric car is very difficult unless you sacrifice so many other things that it becomes, you know, a very simple vehicle. So that's the one point of it. I think the other point is that, you know, we have to start this transformation, and we have to start building these green power plants. If we just say, no, it's not possible, well, we'll never start. But it will slowly happen, and I think an example will be, for instance, is how we watch television today. You know, in America, I think in about 6 months, you can't watch television with a normal antenna anymore. Now, it took many, many years to get to that point, but it's been a slow transformation from normal antennas into cable, into satellite, and now we're going into the digital age where, you know, you can't use a normal antenna. And that will probably be the same in the car industry. I will say it'll probably take another 10 years before we see a majority of vehicles being battery-powered, but the battery-powered vehicles will start in the high end. Just like it was mentioned before, anti-lock brakes started in the high end. You know, electric windows started in the high-end cars. Now every little car has electric windows. So it will take some time, but it's all a matter of supply and demand.
Well, yeah, what about, I was going to say, what about the price elasticity point that was made from the front? That, you know, the marginal cost of getting oil out of the ground in Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or Iraq is, you know, peanuts. So I mean, the oil price is driven by demand, and obviously the high-end supplies will disappear. But there's going to be this residuum of stuff in the Middle East, which is basically cheaper than water. And the profit margin on it can come down and down and down.
But we forget one thing, and that's convenience. So what happens now that you may only pay $1 for a gallon of gasoline or whatever, but you cannot drive into the city center of Sao Paulo maybe. Maybe you can only drive in on zero-emission vehicles. And that's really what's happening around the world right now. There's 27 cities in Europe where you cannot drive into the city center unless you have a zero-emission vehicles. In London, you have to pay $15 if you drive in with a normal vehicle as a congestion charge. If you have an electric car or a plug-in hybrid, you don't pay. And it's the convenience. You don't have to phone up. You don't have to pay for it. You park for free. So I think what's going to happen is the governments around the world will make it a convenience for people to have some sort of zero-emission capability. And that alone will drive, and it's going to become a luxury to have a zero-emission vehicles. And that's why
it is in a sense regulating it into existence.
Well, that's what's going to happen, whether we like it or not. It's already happening.
Fair enough. The question on intellectual property violations. Could you repeat that question?
I remember it.
Have you written it down?
Yeah, I have.
Fine. Okay.
There's actually a whole series of questions